You are listening to Wicked Psychotherapists, a podcast where two psychotherapists show you that taking care of and learning about mental health doesn't have to be wicked hard.
Hi everyone, I'm Tanya Dos Santos.
And I'm Erin Gray.
And this is Wicked Psychotherapists, a podcast brought to you by two therapists who love to talk and bring awareness to mental health topics in our pop culture. So, Erin, how's your week been? How have you been? What's been going on?
I've been pretty good. Nothing new. Paige is taking a nap next to me. And the kids have two weeks left of school. So then summer begins in Florida.
2 weeks. Oh, that's right. Yeah, Florida always has an earlier release than up north because it is disgustingly hot.
Yeah, because Massachusetts, is like the second week of June or something, I think.
I think it's like the third week.
Oh,
of June.
wow.
Pretty, yeah. I mean, and that's if you have no snow days, really.
Yeah. So how about you? How's your week been?
It's been pretty good. Just kind of got to get outside. We're actually getting some really hot weather here in Massachusetts too. So I got some slight color on my very
pale face,
translucent skin. Yeah. Normally you can see veins and all, but now it looks like normal, like kind of, like skin that's not, vampirish. It looks human. So yeah. So I've been out in the garden. I'm not a gardener at all. My husband is, and he was planting some tomatoes. He went buck wild on all these plants, and he was kind of showing me, and I was kind of helping out because I don't really know how to do this stuff.
I will have to take pictures and show you so you can share to your husband, because I am garden obsessed. So I'm such a nerd. I have so many tomato plants that I check on like little babies each day. So I'll have to show you so he can be jealous.
That's nice. Yeah, he will be really jealous because he wants to have like tomato vines. He like built up this whole structure thing. So yeah, it's been pretty nice. And I was thinking about, because this relates to our topic today, that we were just kind of the evolution of the pandemic and what we have experienced, not only just as a people and sharing and in this all over the globe, what it's been like with all these changes and everything that's going on, or that was going on for now. It's May of 2023. So it's past 3 years of this, but also what our work situations have evolved toward or away from. And I know that you and I, we both work from home. We do therapy through telehealth, and obviously our podcast through video means. So we are, kind of today we're taking a peek at what it's been like for the return to in-person work, if people are still doing remote work, or if there's kind of a hybrid version, and where that's at kind of at this point, 3 years past, kind of a, look back and where is it at current state right now. And I thought it might be good for us to talk about some of the pros and cons of, working at home versus working in person, or kind of a hybrid nature, but also what we think about working from home and what our lives were like before this and how it affects things in the field of mental health and affects us personally. So I wanted to ask you, what was your kind of evolution, your change in all of this for the pandemic, for your work life? What did that look like?
Before the pandemic, I had a full-time private practice where I rented an office with a bunch of other therapists. We all weren't coworkers, but we all rented different suites. And I just saw people Monday through Friday from the morning to the afternoon, drive to work, typical drive to work, drive home. See, all my clients were 100% in person and paid rent, came home. And yeah, it was very different than it is now. What about you? Did you work from home or did you work in an office before?
Well, before the pandemic hit, I was actually doing teaching online. So I was teaching English as a second language online. I had taken a little bit of a break away from therapy. So I actually had already been at home, but I was going in and doing kind of like what do they call that? Like per diem type stuff for therapy for agencies. What is that called? Contract work,
Yeah.
I guess.
Yeah. Per diem though is also a term.
Yeah. Yeah. So I was kind of doing that. And I mean, I was using my cars, driving to different locations, and I was definitely doing in-person therapy like right before that, but right before that I had been doing, I was in an office and I was doing therapy, face-to-face sessions. I had not done it any other way leading up to that. And then when the pandemic hit, it was, I was excited, not for the pandemic, but for, I was happy to be able to just kind of walk over to my desk and be like, oh, I don't have to rush to get ready. And I don't have to make sure I have gas in my car. I have to worry about, if my car is going to start, kind of thing. And then, make small talk with Susan, who loves to talk about her cats or whatever. Nothing wrong with that. I mean, but, some days you're just not in the mood for it. And, it just was kind of, it was kind of a nice break in that sense. But then when it kept going on, and it did, as we all know, it started to shift into something else. A little different.
Yeah. I remember being really confused and scared as far as like, what is my work going to look like? Because where I am now, originally it was my guest bedroom type of thing. And we just put a desk in the back room. And because I still had my office fully furnished and I was still paying for it. I still paid for it for an entire year before I finally was like, I need to reconsider this. So we just kind of made a makeshift desk and office for probably a good 6 months. During that time, I was pulled in both worlds because I was still paying for my office. I had the guilt of that. I wasn't fully in my new space because it was still a guest room. It was junk everywhere. It just didn't feel very office-y. It didn't feel I felt very transitional. And also at the beginning, it was like our insurance, because I take insurance. So it was like our insurance company is going to pay. Are they not? What's happening? Which thankfully now they are. But it was difficult. But then it started feeling more comfortable. And I think once I made that commitment to cancel my lease, and I felt like, okay, this is who I am. This is what I'm doing now. And it's funny when you say like the small talk, that was like the stuff I really despise was, oh, hey, you have your candle on too smelly. I'm going to still say hi to you. Or you're talking really loud in the hallway right next to my door while I'm in session. Thanks.
Oh man, I just got a flashback, a flood of memories. Yep.
And it's like, oh my gosh, that's where my office is. Stop, just go away. So like, I don't miss that at all. I don't miss like having to, smell people's lunches while you're, like, and apologize to your clients.
That's a thing.
And so now it's like really nice. I feel as though I can see clients earlier than I did before, because now I see some clients at 8 a.m. where before I wouldn't see them until 9 or 9:30 because of commute and other things. And now I also have the ability to see people later. So like there's some days where I might stop my day at 4 or 3 or 4. Then I might start again and see a few, like maybe in the afternoon or the evening, just 1 or 2. And that's really nice. And I think it's been something I've had to teach myself with the work-life balance, because at first I think like with everybody, when the pandemic happened, it's like, I could just work anytime. So it's like really making sure I shut the door and that's it, and that's it. Work is done. If I need to work on my notes, then I come back. But otherwise it's not, let me work until 10 o'clock. But if I schedule and if it makes sense to see someone at like 4 o'clock or 5 o'clock, that's my choice. It's not like an anchor and I'm being pulled down.
Right.
And
which is a big thing for a lot of people, that they can have that flexibility and keep going throughout their day.
Have you noticed a change with your clients, or what you're hearing about what their work life is looking like?
So I feel like there have been clients, especially recently and in the past 6 months. I know that there was a huge shift back to work about a year ago in 2022 kind of thing, probably like April, June, something like that. But I'm hearing from a lot of my clients that they are either looking for a job and they only want remote or they want hybrid kind of thing. I have yet to encounter someone who's been like, I need in person 100%. And I don't know, maybe that's just my clients, but that seems to be the consensus.
Yeah.
And that it can be, they can find some things, but some jobs that do provide that. However, there can be some hesitation on some industries with wanting to give fully remote, I think, at times. They're more willing to give kind of a hybrid version, but they're saying something like, you have to be in like Monday, Wednesday, Friday kind of thing, and you can have Tuesdays or Thursdays. Whereas I think a lot of people, at least what I'm hearing from my clients, is that they want the flexibility of kind of like, it's there if you need it. Like maybe there's like one day a month you have to be there kind of thing. But that's, so there's a little bit of a clash, I think, in that regard with people. And some people are just choosing to say, hey, if they're not going to give me this, I'm going to look elsewhere.
Yeah, I've heard that as well. And I've also heard it where some companies, some of the bigger companies or even smaller, are starting to feel that push to have people come back because, well, I'm paying this huge lease on this building, or we bought this building, or I need to justify this. So we need to start having people come back.
Yeah.
It doesn't sound like it doesn't sound like the employees are really being thought of. It's more, all right, so we need to justify why the space is not being filled.
Right. It's more of like meeting the requirement for that, which is not necessarily taking, I'm not trying to throw shade, but it's not taking, fully the employees into account. But I mean, there could be other reasons too, right? It could be that there needs to be a headquarters and there have to be some workers that are present in the building. I'm just kind of playing devil's advocate there, but for kind of that continued monitoring and productivity, which is something I think a lot of, maybe not a lot, but some, I've just heard or read about that some employers or corporations are saying, there might be reduced productivity at home because there's kind of more of a lax schedule. There's not really eyes on what's going on. There may also be some employees that, there's things that normally can go up and say like, how's it going? Or there's a manager or somebody or your coworkers that check on them, and they've kind of become isolated, right? And then maybe they're not productive because of that. That would be, kind of I think, was some of the reasons why some of the employers would maybe want to have workers back in that physical state to kind of have eyes on these employees. Yeah.
And some people do really well with minimal supervision and some people do not. And that's no fault of the company or the person. It's just some people do really well with this is the structure. Here's the rules and the guidelines of what we're doing during these hours, or where some people work better with it a little more open-ended and they can handle the flexibility and the less supervision.
Yeah. And I think along with that, piggybacking off of that, I think personality and the type of industry you're in also really comes into play with in person or at home, because the type of work that you're doing, obviously that kind of depends on, there's some work that really can't be done from home. Like, if you're hands-on, like a nurse or a doctor, that's working in a hospital kind of thing, you can't necessarily be doing that. Like some doctors can do some telehealth consults or whatever, but like the hands-on kind of, being able to diagnose and see people and really, manage that day to day. There's other industries that maybe function better if there is kind of that team hands-on in-person energy synergy kind of thing going on, that's really necessary. And then there's also your personality. I mean, do you work best, off the energy of people, probably introvert, extrovert kind of thing? Or do you kind of need to regroup and regenerate, kind of that energy within yourself? So there's so many different factors that need to be taken into account. I'm not sure all employers can necessarily take, like, oh, well, this person has that personality, so they're going to work at home, kind of thing that would be best for them. I mean, that'd be great. The pandemic showed is kind of the, in a sense, and again, I'm not speaking about the actual elements of the pandemic itself, but the working conditions for some introverts and some people that are highly sensitive that get very stimulated by their, like overstimulated by their environment, by smells, by their senses, whatever. It showed kind of like, I work really well in this, I can actually do this. Like before, it maybe felt like that's not an ideal environment for me, because I mean, personally, I know that's the way I felt. I felt really like, wow, without all this, all that small talk of, with, all the Susans and everything like that, or, whoever. I mean, don't get me wrong. Sometimes that's nice. And I do miss it here and there, but it was a huge drain on my energy battery. And it was just so much to have to look out if someone's going to, be bringing in their stinky lunch and you're going to feel gross and have to apologize to your clients, as opposed to you can just talk and deal with the issues with your client. There's not that outside stuff that has to be dealt with.
And there's not a lot of expectations too for people who might have a lot of anxiety or other things happening, like when they're at work. Like if they get distracted by a noise in the break room, so then they have to go see what it is. Or if they can't talk on the phone because the person next to them is talking, they might be a lot more productive, or they found out that they're a lot more productive working from home.
And that it can be a reality, because I think for so long, and some people will still say, well, the real world is when you're out there working with people, but that's not our reality, right? And we're doing fine and we're still in reality, so I don't know. If I think that's kind of shifted the way we look at, does work have to be all these elements thrown in there? Does it have to be an assault on the senses if you are an introverted, sensitive type person, or if you're just not a person that works well in that environment? It definitely has kind of helped to define that. And this is odd, but it's been kind of validating for me. And I've heard from my clients, it's been kind of validating, because there was always something that didn't feel good about going into work. And not to say that they didn't enjoy their jobs, that they didn't like the people, but you just can work better. You can focus more on your job.
Well, it's when you think about it, it is a very weird concept, going to work. Just like going to high school, like you're in this group of people that you wouldn't normally interact with. And you're expected to behave. Sometimes you're like at jobs, you're stuck. I mean, I know some companies, all of a sudden I'm stuck in a group project with these people who I wouldn't choose to work with, who I might not even like them. And then all of a sudden, oh wait, you have to do the group lunches together. You have to do this and that. And it's like, I don't even like them. And then a lot of times people are like, okay, well, I work with these people. Now they're my best friends. It's like, but would I have chosen them as my best friends if I didn't get stuck in a little environment with them? Maybe, maybe not. It's a very strange, it is weird if you start really overanalyzing it.
Yeah, that's true. That's a good point. I mean, because it is kind of like an artificial environment. And at the same point, you kind of think, well, maybe that is something that was good for me, right? To be able to kind of push me out there. If you're the type of person that maybe wouldn't initiate that yourself or would have a hard time finding that. But at the same point, if you don't like your coworkers, or if you just feel kind of odd, or if you think this is a strange thing, which it is like you just described it is kind of like you're just thrown in there and expected to be like cohesive with this group and to make it work kind of thing. It's very strange. And again, I'm not saying anything against, if there's people out there that they love, the energy and the people, and they're extroverted, or they just are, they thrive off of that energy. That's great. That's wonderful. And this was probably, pandemic was probably really hard.
Yeah. And I have seen that, like a lot of my clients, or I've heard from people who really high extrovert, where it's been very difficult for them. And it was very hard then they had to find other ways to find people, whether it's like, oh, you know what, let me go take up a hobby that, let me start kayaking or play tennis, or find something else where I can interact with people. And so that, and even for those that are working from home who are loving it, that's also needed. That's a conversation I have all the time. It's like, so you're hanging out with your dog and your cat all day. What else are you doing?
feel called out.
I know.
know.
Paige is gonna be resentful that I just said that. But,
she's like, I thought we were best friends.
We are best friends, Paige. But but yeah, but it is. I mean, I know myself. It's like sometimes I'm like, wait a minute, have I driven my car in a couple days? What is like? Let me. So I will have to force myself to just do different things or interact with people. And I know it is important. It's important to figure out that balance, but it's also important for companies it would be great if they're able to see, well, what are people's strengths? Who, like what you said was really great. Like if they're able to see who works really well hybrid, who works good at home, like if that was part of the interview process, that would be really great.
Yeah, I think, and I mean, depending on what industry it is, maybe that might not be possible, but I think for a lot of corporate environments, it probably would be if there's, some element of people that are maybe doing the tech portion, other people that are doing like product development, that you can kind of play around a little bit with the in-person versus the at-home or hybrid styles. And obviously I know we're not talking about all industries, this is not necessarily applicable.
Like the medical field and probably construction, different trades and different things like that. They have to be in person.
Yeah. And I do have to say though, after all of this, with generations that were, or the younger generation that went through school with this or had this experience, this little kind of blip in the middle.
Yeah.
Where they had to do school at home. I do wonder if it's a thing that now in their heads growing up, they understand that is an option. Whereas,
it's interesting because I have small children, like they're in elementary. They were, like in kindergarten during it and first grade, so it's very pretty core times in your life, but they both want jobs that are like 100% with other people outside,
Really?
Yeah. Oh, okay. like being a very specific zoo vet and very specific, engineer construction, something like doing something outside with people doing, and both of them are zero inside jobs, which I find that interesting.
That is really interesting. And who knows, maybe that influenced them that time when they were like, I don't like, schooling at home. Like, this isn't something I like, being around friends, or maybe it just is who they are. Right. Yeah. Or maybe both. And I think there's probably also some kids that maybe in a strange way, maybe have hope from that is an option. Yeah. Right.
Well, and I do hear from a lot of their friends just are like 100% fine still being inside doing video. Like that's still the norm. And I hear from clients who are in their 20s and 30s and that a lot of them are either looking for hybrid or in person, but very light.
Yeah, kind of in-person light.
Yeah, I am hearing less are seeking 100% virtual, but I'm sure it's still there. I know, probably the 40s, the 40 plus, maybe they're like, hey, this was really good, but this was never an option for us before.
Yeah, it's kind of, and I mean, I speak from that category. Like, it's very much, to me, like if I, when I was growing up, that just was not an option. Whenever I would try to think of that, or if I'd say it, people would be like, oh no, you got to work with people. These jobs just weren't conceived of, right? It just wasn't there. The setup wasn't there. So I mean, have someone who had extreme social anxiety, it was scary to me to think about getting a job. I knew I had to do it. I knew I had to push myself to do it, but I wonder if there's, kids that probably feel like, okay, and not to say that you just get a job and you don't interact with people and that's good, because obviously you have to still learn to interact with people, but it's not as overwhelming, I think, and it's not as much of a pressure.
Yeah, I feel as though I probably would have done better in the workforce if I had the option of hybrid or something like that, because I always feel like any job I've had, I've always had issues with authority. I don't know if it's the Gen X in me, but I just really, it's hard for me to really, like, I notice like after an amount of time, I get really frustrated with the system and I start being the ethic police, and it's really difficult. And I think it's because I'm there. And I wonder what it would have looked like if I had the option of not always being on site or not always noticing.
Yeah, it's almost like your senses were maybe too in tune with some of that, whereas it could have been a little bit lighter, right? Being like having some distance with that, if there
Yeah.
was kind of that hybrid or in-person light, I like that term that you coined there, that was there. Yeah, it's interesting to kind of look at, and I just think it's really nice that we have this option now, and because insurance does see this as a legitimate form of therapy, that's probably the sole reason why we can
Yeah.
continue that, right? For therapists that take insurance, because there was a time, I think, it was kind of wavering throughout the pandemic, where there was kind of these rumors, or I don't know if they were real or if it was just kind of things being thrown out there, waters being tested of insurance companies saying, well, we need, in-person therapy. We need to
Right.
go back to that kind of thing. But I think they realized it worked, and it's something that, people are willing to do, and why I don't think
Yeah.
they want to miss out on
Well,
money. So
I was just going to say, and I think it's actually saving the insurance companies money, because with the teleservice for medical plus mental health, I think their customers, the insurers, are probably utilizing services more and probably getting really sick less and having less serious mental health concerns or issues if they have it more accessible.
yeah, I think so too. I think if it's, available to kind of make an appointment and then have it right there, as opposed to, oh, maybe I have to find a ride, or I have to find time in between this or that, and it could be canceled. Yeah, you're going to have better accessibility on that for both medically and mental health. Yeah, so I think it's something that they just couldn't deny the effectiveness of it.
Yeah.
And, and I wanted to ask, during the pandemic, because we were both doing therapy during the pandemic, I went to a group practice at the start of the pandemic.
Right.
And you were also doing kind of the transition
Right.
until it settled. Did you notice that there maybe was people who were coming to you that maybe would not have come to you before? Did you kind of get that sense to get services?
Yes, I actually was getting a wider range of older people that because usually my I don't know, I don't want to sound ageist or anything, but I usually see people like in my mid 20s, and usually like mid 40s. That's usually the range of people. I don't know. I'll happily see a 70-year-old, but that's just usually what it seems to be. But I noticed I started seeing more, like a few 60, some people even older. And then I also noticed the other end of the spectrum, really young. Like, so again, I usually was seeing like mid 20s. So I started seeing like 21-year-olds, and just kind of like, hey, what am I supposed to do now? I'm not in like colleges, or like 18. I saw a few like 18, 19-year-olds who graduated, but now college life looks really different than they had planned. So that was kind of interesting. So for that transition too.
Yeah, I think it brought about, I mean, I saw similar trends too, at least with not with the young kids, but maybe like teenagers, or in that transitional state in college, but also with the kind of older generation of saying like, I have this benefit and I can set this up, and what do I do? So it was not just, the age range, but also with the new kind of problems or difficulties, like how to navigate that. So we found ourselves, I mean, I saw plenty of memes and in therapist groups where people were like, how do we help when the world's burning down? What do we tell people, kind of things. And we really had to, I had to say, we had to navigate a lot, know, and, to kind of, be in a world with all these new problems, with innovation and understanding, but also not really knowing ourselves, right?
Yeah, and I guess that's kind of the art of being a therapist too, is, being able to navigate a situation and be there for a client when we might have uncertainty and we might have anxiety about the exact same situation that they are, but we have to breathe and support them in whatever way we can. And I mean, like, there was times I was like freaking out just like my clients, but I had to be like, okay, what can I do to navigate this situation? All right, maybe I'll exercise a little bit more. Maybe I'll talk to my own therapist. this. Maybe I'll just,
Yeah.
figure it out. But while you were saying that too, I thought of another group that I saw a lot of, which I thought was really interesting. New mothers who had their babies during the pandemic.
Oh, yeah.
I had a lot of those because that world was so different from them, especially if this was their second baby or very first, because there's no mommy and me classes. There was no mothers to support them. They had to be a new mom for an entire year by themselves with just their nuclear family. So very, very different. I know people might be like, oh, that's no big deal. That should just be them and the baby, but it is a big deal. When you can't go to the library and you can't do the little classes, you don't have the mommy and me classes, you don't have support. It's really hard. That's one group that I think a lot of people don't really think about or talk about, but that was probably really hard for the new moms, I think.
That's true. That's such a good point. Yeah, I did have a few of those at the beginning of the pandemic and kind of like a year in, and it was tough because there was no way as a therapist, you usually recommend, okay, support groups, this and that, but that it just wasn't available. Maybe online, but a lot of them were saying they were, online fatigued, right? They didn't want to, that just wasn't doing it. Yeah. And with a new child, you want the support of, if you have family that can come and visit, like if you have parents or, grandparents or siblings or something, you may not have had that option or friends, that are really involved.
Yeah. And then some people don't even meet the baby until the baby's over 1, which is so unusual.
I had a few of those. Yeah. Which it was very, it's almost like a different line of development, than most kind of typical childhoods or, growing up from being born to, being around family and friends and things like that. It really changes that trajectory. And I think that's a lot of, we did talk about with some of those clients, we did talk about some of that and that, this can be caught up. This can be unique. This will be unique to their generation kind of thing. But is that much solace? Not really, and that felt kind of crappy to me as a therapist to kind of be like, that's kind of what we can do.
And then also you wonder if those people were on maternity leave, it seems like they chose not to go back. A lot of people, like if they, so I wonder if that going back to like the work realm, like if careers saw people who are on maternity leave or FMLA choose not to come back during that period.
That's true. And I know there were, for at least in my area, I think there was like a teacher shortage. There was a nursing shortage. Yeah. Because people didn't really want to go back after a certain point, or they don't, they don't like the conditions. They couldn't take it anymore.
Yeah. So I did hear that. I did hear that I had heard from different teachers and stuff that a lot of teachers chose not to renew their contracts or.
Yeah, definitely. So there's for sure. I know we're kind of talking about all aspects of kind of how the pandemic. Yeah, and I guess just in saying there's not one answer that fits all, right?
Yeah, and I guess it is also like going back to the individual. So if you're at a company that is like, okay, well you have to go back hybrid or you have to go back full time, think like what is it about it that's scaring me? Do I not want to go back full time because I haven't done it in 2 or 3 years? Or is it just that I work better? Or what are the barriers? Because it could just be scary that it's something new. Or it could be that, wait a minute, I really work a lot better without the distractions. But we're not telling you to quit your job, or do anything. But it's good to figure out what environment you work best in. And because everyone, we're all individuals, and some people, even therapists, there's a lot of therapists who are like, heck no, I am not doing virtual. There were some that did in person throughout the entire pandemic and never stopped. And some are back full time. I chose not to because it just works better. And I found out that most of my clients seem to really like virtual because you take less time off of work. It's there. You can do it in your house. You could do it in your parking lot of your job. You could do it wherever you are, therapy is. But
I like that.
Yeah. But some people don't like that. Some people, like I've had some new people looking for a therapist want 100% in person. I'm like, that's not me, but I can refer you to people that do it.
Yeah.
And, sometimes I think like, what would it look like in the future? Would I want to go back in person? I don't know. I mean, I don't know. I mean, and I have a lot of other reasons. Like, sometimes it's like, okay, you feel more comfortable, safer, whatever it is. More, and that might be what people are feeling too. It's like, I feel comfortable. I feel safer. I can get some chores done in between my job. I could do this, like, who knows what everyone's reason is. But I think it is important for people to start having that conversation with their work, or even start thinking about it with themselves, because more companies are going to start thinking, do we start going to the hybrid, or do we stay remote, or do we start requiring people, especially new hires, to start working in the office?
Yeah, because there's options now. I mean, people are now saying if it's not something that they like, they'll go elsewhere and they'll find something that they do like, because there are other options out there.
Yeah.
It's now a thing that it may not be every industry or every workplace agrees with it or can do it, but you do have the option of, if that's something that if you find that you just do not work well being in person, which I am amongst.
Yeah,
I'm amongst that group.
Yeah.
I think I would ideally like to have the option to go in, like, here and there. I think that would be nice, but I'm okay. I'm okay with this, and I think that some people, I feel like it makes me a better therapist because I don't think about all these other things. I don't have to worry about or stress about these other things that it used to take up a large amount of my headspace. I realized that.
Yeah.
And it's better this way.
And sessions start and end more, I don't know, I feel like I'm more punctual. Whereas like in person, there's okay, you gotta still walk out the door, then maybe go to the bathroom, and then go get the client, then get resituated. Then you got to get your mind back in the headspace. Where I feel it's like online, it's like, okay, enter session. Okay, I'm here. Let me, it just seems a lot more, I don't know. I just feel like it's more efficient for me. And I feel like the clients get a better, I don't know. I hope they get a better, I hope they feel like they have a really good interaction.
I think if you're feeling it, then they are, right? And it probably is. I mean, I think there's more of a visual component to it, which is very important to me as well. I see exactly what you're saying. Yeah, I feel the same way, that it's, I definitely feel a lot better about my beginnings and my closings. It can kind of, it signals something in my brain more than if I was in person, where I would kind of dawdle and kind of just be like, la-di-da, and think like, oh, we're having a conversation, and then kind of lose track of time, sort of.
It's like, oh, wait, how are my legs situated? How is my hand? Like I noticed, like,
yeah, that's true.
Sometimes, like, it's just weird. Like as a therapist, sometimes you're just very aware of your own body. At least I was. Like, it's like, all right.
Me too.
Legs? Should I not? Should I lean more? Should I not? It's very strange.
That's exactly what I would say. And then I would start to analyze, oh my gosh, am I scratching my like face too much, or am I looking at my nail, like just anything that like were probably not even noticeable until I started to become overly self-conscious and started to do them more and more. And then I'm like, what are they saying? Like that's not, and obviously we can't have that, like we have to be listening. So I know that's very therapy specific, but well, that's what we're talking about. Whatever.
Yeah. That's us. Get over it. No.
Take it or leave it. Yeah. But yeah, no, I think that's a good amount of, coverage, gives a lot of different perspectives. I think we covered a lot of different avenues, a lot of different points here.
Yeah. Yes.
Oh yeah. And it's so individualized. Like, I think that's kind of the key takeaway is it kind of puts for the most part, I mean, depending on the industry, and if you're really kind of needing to get something and it's maybe only in a very specific way that you can work. Besides that, I think it kind of puts the ball more in the worker's hands, the
Yeah.
employees' hands, you know.
Yeah. I mean, I'm just really grateful for technology, and I'm grateful that I'm able to do this. Like, just, I often think I
Me
need to
too.
change my setup a little bit more, like get a better screen, but that's just my own thing. I mean, I'm grateful that I get to work with my dog every day. I mean, it's so
Yeah.
stupid, but it's just really, it's nice.
That's nice though. I think most people like that.
Yeah, and she's
Think,
quiet. She's not a barker.
Yeah, she's not going to hinder anything. Yeah, she's a very sweet, well-behaved doggy.
Yes.
So good talks.
I know.
And,
I feel like I learned stuff today.
yeah, me too. Just the way it was like you would phrase things and your phrases of, I like what was it? The in-person light. I like that.
Yeah,
one.
maybe we'll have to coin that. We'll trademark that.
Yeah.
Hybrid what? It's in-person light.
There you go. Yeah, you can keep adding to the vocabulary. But yeah, I think that, well, we hope that you learned something and you found this interesting, and hit the like and subscribe button if so. We are Wicked Psychotherapists, and hope you have a good week.